What the hell was that?
Well, the Bulldogs have defeated the Bombers by 91 points at Marvel Stadium. Do you ever wonder why you're a Bomber fan sometimes? Yep, me too. It was the kind of result that I think in the back of our minds a lot of us potentially thought could happen. We're going to talk all about what happened right now. So we really did get a reality check in the game at Marvel Stadium on Saturday night. That's just the reality of the situation. We're 5-0 against teams in the bottom half of the ladder who are out of the finals, and we are yet to win a game against a team in the 8, and we haven't really got close against a team in the 8, to be perfectly honest. And we just weren't in the same class as the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are a team that are one of the highest scoring teams in the competition. We rely very much on contested possession and also maintaining possession. And if you look at our losses this year, particularly the one against Adelaide, the other sort of big margin loss, when the opposition is able to take away our strength, we don't really have a plan B. And this is the problem I think Essendon and Brad Scott are going to find themselves in, is what they can do to get out of this funk when the opposition are able to take away our strength. So, for example, the Bulldogs today in this match, the Bulldogs in this match on Saturday night had more possessions than Essendon, which is unusual. Essendon have fluctuated between the number 1 and number 2 team in the competition for disposals. The Bulldogs had about 80 more disposals than Essendon and had 50 more kicks than Essendon. And if we can't control the ball, we have no plan B. There is nothing else that we really have to our game. We do have contested possession that we're kind of okay at, but you don't really score much from contested possession. Teams tend to score from turnover. And at the end of the day, if we don't control the ball, we're not going to win the game. And this is why I'm kind of skeptical as to whether our game plan can hold up during finals. Because in finals, the opposition aren't going to let you control the ball. They're going to, the intensity is going to go up. They're going to probably play more of a bit of a man-on-man game. They're going to try to shut you down and not let you take uncontested marks. And that's where our game begins to fall apart, in my opinion. What do you guys think in the comments? Let me know. I didn't watch anything on TV. I was at the game. I go to every game. So I wasn't sort of listening to the commentary or anything like that. It was just what I've been observing as a fan in the stands. And I just think that our game plan is unsuitable for finals football. Not that we're going to be playing finals football, but I really think we need to be playing the type of game plan that can at least hold up when the opposition gets on top of our strengths. Now, we can't be a one-trick pony where the only thing we have is, our disposal game. And, we only had 37 inside 50s as well. They had 24 more inside 50s. We moved the ball too slowly. Just a whole lot went wrong. But anyway, just going through the game. So the first quarter, the first 10 minutes was, probably even the first half of the first quarter, to be honest, was kind of a bit of an arm wrestle. There wasn't a goal for a little while. I don't think there was a goal until probably around halfway through the first quarter. But as soon as it did, the floodgates opened. Bontempelli, West, McNeil, Vandermeer, Karmas, Richards and Liberatore finally kicked 7 first quarter goals for the Bulldogs. And the first 3 goals they kicked in that quarter were from broken tackles. And that was really part of the problem all night, is that their tackling was better than ours. We couldn't hold on to their tackles, and it led to, directly to scores. And you just can't afford that. And from the get-go, we were down by, 7 goals. And really, the game was over at that point. But even if you just look at some of the numbers at quarter time, the Bulldogs had 23 more uncontested possessions at quarter time. We normally lead that stat. They're already 23 more than up on us just in the quarter. They had 4 marks inside 50 to our 1, 15 inside 50s to 9, and most of the players on the ground from their side were controlling the ball. Sanders, Dale, Liberatore all had 13 disposals in the first quarter. Dale, of course, would go on to have nearly 50 for the game. So that was just insane. And, the only player who really was, I thought, looked like they were putting some effort in, at least in that first half, was Durham, who he had the 8 possessions. Roberts had 9, but I don't think Roberts was having a huge influence on the game. Durham did look like he was really giving a genuine go there in the middle. But look, at quarter time, we were down 45 to 3, and really the match was essentially over at that point. Second quarter was a little better in that we were able to contain the Bulldogs to only 3 goals, but we were only able to get the 1 goal ourselves from Dersma. You know, it's not a good sign when you go into half-time and you're still not in double figures on the board. And something I've just thought about with, and I brought this up in a previous video, I think it might have been the last video I made or the second last video I made, where I said, are we real or are we fake? And you know, we've got a bit of a mixed reaction. That's good. Get a bit of discussion happening. I think we're probably more fake at this stage, and I think that the good defensive record that we've had over the last 5 or 6 weeks has probably been a little bit misleading because we've been robbing Peter to pay Paul. We've been throwing a lot of resources to do that, and it's come at the expense of our offense. And one of the things I was noticing was, I wanted to bring up was a player like Kako, who's obviously a really good player, right? Top 10 pick or close to a top 10 pick. And he's obviously got ability. You can see it whenever he gets the ball. He's obviously got talent. But our game plan isn't built for him to succeed. It's almost like, the phrase, planning to fail. Failing to plan is planning to fail. It's almost as if our game plan is not built for him to succeed. And one of the things I did bring up in, I think, the last video was that in the home and away season, 50% of games are won by control, where there's more marks than ground balls, and 50% of games are won by chaos. That's when there's more ground balls than marks. And in finals, it's 80-20. In finals, 80% of finals are won by chaos, where there's more ground balls than marks, and only 20% are won by control. All our games are won by control when we win them. And a player like Kako has the potential to be that chaos footballer down there, but our game isn't built for him to succeed at the moment. All right, there's nothing he can do. I can't think of any opportunities he's really had down there, but he's obviously a good player. I see him potentially as someone like a Nick Watson from Hawthorn, like potentially to reach that kind of level. Obviously, high draft pick, quality player, good skills. But our game plan isn't suited for him to score goals through that sort of chaos ground ball, strategy, if you like. It's just not. I mean, we're careful when we go in there. We're always looking for a target. There's always, it's not usually a very open forward line, except for a couple of exceptions where Nick Martin ran into an open goal at some point. I think it might have been in the third quarter. But we really need to, figure out the best way to utilise the talents of the player. There's talent on the list. There is. Maybe not as much as we'd like, but there is talent on the list. It's just a matter of utilising it. But anyway, West and Richards kicked the first 2 goals of the quarter. Dersma got the first one for the Bombers before Norton finished off. And at half-time, the Bulldogs led by 59 points. We still were not able to stop the Bulldogs' control of the ball, which, like I said, was really the crux of the problem. Bailey Dale had 25 possessions at half-time. Libba himself had 24. Kennedy had 19. The Bulldogs had 5 of the top 6, possession, winners on the ground. And our top one was Archie Roberts, who, probably didn't have he was getting a bit of the ball down there, but he didn't really have a big influence on the game and made at least a couple of turnovers, at least that I could remember off the top of my head. But not only were the Bulldogs winning more of the ball in terms of just, getting more of the ball, having more disposals. They had, 11 more contested possessions at half-time. They had 30 more uncontested possessions, 7 marks inside 50 to 2. This is a stat that we never perform well in. We just don't get the ball inside 50. Tackles inside 50. At half-time, it was 6-1 in favour of the Bulldogs. We are last in the AFL in this stat. Tackles inside 50. We are, that is a poor area for us. We just don't hold the ball in there. It is an area we need to work on. The third quarter was our most productive quarter. We kicked 3 goals. The Bulldogs won it. They kicked 5 goals to 3. It's always a bit difficult analysing the second half of these matches because really both teams know the game is over. We did make a change with the sub. We brought Dylan Shiel on for Sardo Ahuli. I thought that was interesting to bring Sard off because I don't think Sard was our worst player, to be honest, in that first half. He was giving us, look, no one was outstanding, let's just be perfectly honest. But I don't think he was our worst player, and I thought, given that he's young, I thought it would have been a good chance to get a whole game out of him. And it's not as if Shield went on to have a big impact in this game. But yeah, the third quarter, and really both teams ended up really just playing it out. Martin kicked the opening goal of the quarter. It was a nice little goal, actually. He was wide on his own, but it was from a nice cohesive bit of play from the back line where we kicked it into a wide open 50 metre. I think Caddy might have kicked it to him. So that was a nice bit of play. But the Bulldogs got the next 4 goals. Davidson, Kennedy, Bont and Riley West, before Perkins did what he has often been doing and chipped in for a nice little goal. He seems to sort of do his 1 goal a game. And Durham also kicked a goal before Bailey Williams kicked the last goal of the third term to give the Bulldogs a 75-point lead. And at that point, I just wanted to not lose by 100 points. I hate losing by 100. I just think it's a stain on you when you lose by 100. There is something to be said for getting a reality check and just copying an embarrassment. And that can be a good thing sometimes. It's a debatable topic, I know, as to whether you actually want a spanking. But sometimes if you cop a real embarrassing loss, it can sort of act as an instigating force for future weeks, just to ensure that doesn't happen again. And also, the competitive athletes, like those playing AFL football, don't like to be embarrassed. So it's 75 points down. Look, I just didn't want to get lose by 100. And the last quarter was kind of a non-event. It was just 3-1. West kicked a goal. Wright kicked a goal. I thought Wright could have potentially, before this game started, I was hoping Wright would have a big influence on this game, simply because Wright has played very well in the past against the Bulldogs. In the wins we've had against them, he's been a big influence. I think he kicked 7 goals, in front of a COVID zero crowd there at one point. And he kicked a goal, and Karmas kicked the last 2 goals of the game. And the Bulldogs had their 91-point win. And most of the interest in the last quarter was Bailey Dale of whether he could get to 50 possessions. The crowd was certainly aware of it, I can tell you, sitting in the AFL members down there. He got to 47, 48, and there were big cheers, so everyone knew what was going on because it was on the big scoreboard. But they couldn't get it to him to get that 50th possession. Would have been nice, I guess, to see a player get to 50. It's a very rare thing, but really, how can an opposition let another player get 50 possessions? He had 37 kicks, for God's sake, Bailey Dale. And I mentioned in the previous video, Bailey Dale did not play against Essendon in the last time we played them when we beat them, and he's ranked as the best kick in the AFL. Not the best kick in for the Bulldogs. He's ranked as the best kick in the AFL, and they gauge that stat not on kicking efficiency so much. Like if you just kick a 100% kick backwards to a player and it's certain that it's going to be marked by a teammate. It's like a normal uncontested possession. That means it was you're expected to kick an efficient kick. It's basically what your kicking efficiency actually is compared to what it's expected to be. So if you pull off a difficult kick that's got a 50% chance of hitting a teammate, but you do it 70% of the time, then you're going at 20% above efficiency. That's kind of how it works, okay? So Bailey Dale was ranked, even before this game, as the best kick in the AFL, going on expected performance of where of how his kicks end up. So that was the final score. We'll just have a quick look at some of the stats. The Bulldogs had, 469 disposals to 385. If you just looked at that before the match and you just saw that number and you didn't know what the final score was, you knew we were no chance. It's not always necessary to have more disposals than the opposition, but for Essendon it is. Right? When your game plan is built around that, if the opposition can dominate control, we have 0 chance. They had 47 more kicks than us. They had 61 inside 50s to 37. Clearances, an area that the Bulldogs are very, very strong in. They won that 34 to 26, even though centre clearances were pretty even. Stoppage clearances, they led 23 to 14. Contested possessions, an area that is a strength to Essendon. Normally, the Bulldogs led that by 16. And look at that, uncontested possessions. It's about 80 more. It's really just embarrassing, isn't it? And we had 9 more turnovers as well. Marks inside 50. The Bulldogs had 21 marks inside 50 to 9. 16 tackles inside 50 to 5. An area that really is disastrous for Essendon. We are bottom of the AFL in tackles inside 50. 16 to 5. That is just a terrible number. And most of the other stats were kind of irrelevant. So how did the Bomber players go? Who were our best players? Well, I thought probably Durham was our best player. That was at least from my observation in the stand. He only had the 87 champion data points in 24 possessions, but I just thought he had a go all night. It looked like he was giving 100%. I thought he was our best. Dersma was okay. Dersma had the 20 possessions, 77 champion data points, seemed to have a bit of a crack. Martin was passable, had the 25 possessions and kicked one goal too. I'd still like to see him more in the forward line. I think he would assist us in creating more chaos goals. Setterfield, who really has been in pretty good form, let's face it, Setterfield had the 26 possessions and he's been a bit of an asset to us. Redmond had 27 possessions, 100 Supercoach points, but, he should be picking up a fair amount of possessions out there in the back line. Wright was passable, had the 16 possessions and kicked a goal. Archie Roberts had 29 possessions and, on the face of it, a reasonable game. I don't think he influenced the game, though. Like, I don't think there was any I don't think you could watch the game and think that he had sort of any real impact on the game. Zach Reed was pretty good again. He had the 15 possessions, 7 marks, took a couple of intercept marks as he normally does, copped that knee in the back, so maybe he wasn't quite 100% fit, but he was our usual reliable self. McGrath did a couple of turnovers, had 25 possessions, typical Andrew McGrath game, bursting out of defence and then turning the ball over. He wasn't our worst player though. Mackay had the 15 possessions, took a couple of intercept possessions and has, as to his credit, has been playing a little bit better. Laverty had no real impact on the game, had the 18 possessions and a lot of these possessions are just backward possessions, kicks to each other. There's really no influence on the game for this. Goldstein was well beaten by Tim English, so it'll be interesting to see what Essendon do, because Goldstein will probably need a rest at some point. Are we going to bring in Braden Crosley in the mid-season draft as ready to go ruckman, mature ruckman? So we're going to find out in a week about that. Pryor wasn't our worst. I thought he wasn't our worst. Had the 17 possessions. Hobbs had no real influence on the game, 15 possessions. Caldwell struggling to get back into it a little bit. Caldwell, I think he seemed to spend more time on the bench getting, his muscles oiled up. Looked like he was on a catwalk there for a while, Jai Caldwell. But he's just struggling a little bit, coming back from his hamstring injury to get the feel of the game back. Look, he's a great player, probably in our top 5 players in terms of ability and output normally. And, hopefully he has a better game next week in the Dreamtime game. Merritt toiled away for 20 possessions and kicked it behind. Probably his worst game of the year. It shows something about his quality when he can have the 20 possessions and still, not have a terrible game. Archer Daywicks had the 12 possessions, no real impact on the game. Same with Perkins with 14 possessions. Langford with 10 possessions, didn't hit the scoreboard. Probably having an average season, to be honest. A little bit like Caldwell is struggling a little bit in the weeks after coming back from his hamstring injury. He hasn't really hit his straps. He's not really influencing games at the moment, Langford. I'd like to see him maybe go back to playing at a full forward at least. And once you start hitting that scoreboard, it gets your confidence up. But he's just nowhere near it at the moment. Caddy, after probably the 3 best games of his career, where he kicked 3 goals last week, got the Rising Star, and 2 goals, 3 behinds, and 2 goals, 3 behinds in the 2 weeks prior to that. So 3 really good games from him. Had no real influence on the game, as you'd expect in a team that only kicked 5 goals, 6. Dylan Shield had the 8 possessions after halftime, coming on as the sub. Saad El Houli had the 9 possessions, came off. I don't think he was our worst player. Look, he had 47 champion data points up to halftime. I thought he was giving us something out there. Not a whole lot. Like no one was excellent, let's face it. But I thought he was not our worst. And Kako only had the 7 possessions and had no real influence on the game. As I stated a little bit earlier in this video, I don't think our game plan at the moment is built for him to succeed, and we need to change things up to give him an opportunity. It's not all about him. It's about creating an environment that gives him the opportunity to succeed. So, what do you guys think? Did you go to the game? Did you stay to the end? I stayed to the bitter end. I always do. I never leave early. Sometimes you feel like it. I wanted to get home and make this video and get it out before I went to bed, and I'm just about to upload it and send it to the YouTube upload studio before I go to bed. So anyway, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Disappointing result to the Bombers. Hopefully we can bounce back next week in the Dreamtime game against Richmond. It's no certainty that's going to be a tough game. All games are tough for us. I'll leave it at that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day, everybody. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button. And as always, go Bombers.